Welcome back to Miyazaki and Me. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Cheyne.
In this episode, we are going over Miyazaki's third feature film, Castle in the Sky.
Or as it's known in Japan, Laputa Castle in the Sky. Laputa being taken from Gulliver's Travels. Miyazaki took it right from there. They did not know that it actually meant the whore in Spanish, though, so they had to change that for the American release.
Yes, it is one word, not two, for the American release.
Yes. So, for the American release, they dropped Laputa completely.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But, I mean, they still refer to the island as Laputa.
Yes, in the movie they do. Yes.
But it's one word instead of two. Castle in the Sky was released on August 2nd of 1986. It had a budget of $3.3 million. So
How much did it make?
not much. In Japan, it made 8.1 million, which was down from the 13 that Nausicaa made. And worldwide, through the various releases, it has made 15.5.
It's still, made money.
That was also, some of those releases were up to the 2000s.
Got it.
So there's that. But yeah, this was an interesting film, for sure. I didn't like it as much as some of the other ones that we covered.
I enjoyed this movie. It's more of a actual film than Nausicaa was. So
Yes.
There was a beginning, middle, end that wasn't 4,800 plot points that you had to all connect together. All in all, Nausicaa is the better movie of the two, I would say. I think that this one even took a little step back animation-wise than Nausicaa as well.
Yeah, that's like, I didn't look up the budget until just before this, and I would have thought it was flopped. I would have thought it was flipped because Nausicaa, had a $1.7 million budget, and this had a $3.3 million budget. I would have thought that Nausicaa would have been the bigger budgeted movie for sure.
I would have guessed that as well, but it also shows, as we talked about with Nausicaa, they used some really cheap options that ended up being really good for them.
Yes, that's true.
So, this one they went for the more established artists and things like that.
They had Topcraft, as we talked about, for Nausicaa. And at this point, Topcraft had kind of disbanded, as we talked about in the previous episode. So probably having to bring all of those people in-house was more expensive.
Yeah. Being as this was the true first Ghibli movie.
Yeah, this is the very first Studio Ghibli proper movie, release and everything. And they had some stiff competition coming out this year. This is in our animation timeline section. This is the big challenge where, like, other years it has been pretty definitive. Like, well, one of the Studio Ghibli movies was probably the best animated movie of the year. This year, I don't know if we can say that.
Yeah.
Because some of the lesser tier were like My Little Pony and the Heathcliff movie. We also had the very first Dragon Ball feature movie, Curse of the Blood Rubies. Care Bears 2, The New Generation. But then the big two that also came out were The Great Mouse Detective and An American Tail.
That's some stiff competition.
And also Transformers.
Robots in Disguise, they're so good. That movie was so good.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
86 was a good year.
86 was a very good year for animation because we had that as the films, and then TV shows. Dragon Ball started, Mobile Suit Gundam ZZ. The Real Ghostbusters and The New Adventures of Johnny Quest all started in 1986.
So this one, once again, we watched the English dubbing, and lots of stars for this English dub. And some of them not playing, top of the card lead characters, because a couple people down on the list here, Mandy Patinkin,
Mm-hmm.
many of you might know as Inigo Montoya, who
Yep.
played Louis in the movie. Andy Dick played Henry. Those are two of the sons.
Okay, I was
That
gonna
we'll
say
get to.
like those were the sons, right?
Yep, yep. Jim Cummings, you might also know him as Winnie the Pooh, was the general in this movie. And then the top of the list here. So Colonel Muska, the lead villain, is played by Mark Hamill, and you can tell it's Mark Hamill right from the get go.
Yep.
Uh,
Also Muska with the keeping with the Miyazaki tradition of a villain with an ascot.
yeah, very much so. Captain Dola, who is the leader of the pirates, is Cloris Leachman, keeping with the tradition of a wise old lady that kind of teeters on good or bad at points in the movie, but is helpful for the plot.
But she was fantastic. So
Oh, she was great. And then the two leads, Pazu and Princess Sheeta, were James Vanderbeek and Anna Paquin, which at this time in 1998, when this was dubbed, were one was doing Dawson's Creek, and the other one was coming off of the piano. Question mark?
coming off of the piano and just about to start X-Men.
Yep.
Yeah, because the piano's like 92.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, piano's like early to mid 90s. So
this is like her in between time of when she won the Oscar and then when she got big again.
yes, like I said, it's just before X-Men would start. And shockingly, so we realized in recording the last episode, and we'll appreciate some feedback in this. We didn't want to go beat by beat of the story because we figure a lot of you are watching along with us. So we're not going to go beat by beat because that ends up being, an hour and a half long podcast. And we were trying to keep these under an hour.
Yeah, we found out with Nausicaa, we were trying to give the gist of the story with most of these, but with Nausicaa, we realized that, like I said, it's more of a 24 episode series in movie form. So there was just so many beats that we had to hit, I felt, to tell the story properly, that it just went long, and we don't want to do that to you guys. We want to give you something that's containable, that our podcast shouldn't go as long as the movie itself.
Yes.
So we're gonna speed that up a little bit for this.
Yeah, so we're gonna speed that up, but ironically, so we're just going over a few of our favorite scenes. But ironically, though, one of my favorite scenes was the opening scene. So we start off right away with an air battle because it's a Miyazaki film.
Of course. This actually, fun fact about this air battle, this was considered one of the early and bigger steampunk breakouts, and actually caused a trend of steampunked animes because of what they did with all this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, so we've got the pirates. It's, as I'll refer to them, kind of storming this airship. And they are trying to, you don't know what they're looking for at first, but you then see this little girl who would be Sheeta, and we kind of realize she's sort of trapped and like kind of under capture.
Yeah, it kind of starts interestingly because it looks like she's just kind of hanging out in a room with what could be butlers or people that are just kind of protecting her. And you realize once the pirates get on there and she attacks the people that were in the room with her, that is not the case, that she is being forced to be there.
Yeah, she's being forced to be there. She grabs this necklace that you can tell is important to her, and then goes off the side of this airship, and is like trying to sneak out to like crawl across us, to get to another room to escape the pirates. But as she goes to escape the pirates, she falls off the ship, and it looks like she just falls through the clouds and to her death. But,
Uh,
that would be a very short movie.
and that was the end.
Yeah, that was the end of the movie. It definitely wasn't like that crystal magically saved her, and she floats down safely, until actually Pazu catches her.
Yeah, and this kind of leads into one of my favorite moments. They have a little sweet scene, and them getting to know each other, and gaining some trust. And then you find that the pirates are coming and searching for them, and they have to flee from these pirates. So they run down into the village, and the boy runs to a gentleman that has already been introduced as his boss, saying that he needs help. So he ushers them into his house, and then has a scene that is reminiscent to me of when General Alexander met the teacher's husband in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, of like a flex off, where they just they just do a manly off in the middle of the street, and then eventually start fighting. And it was just a funny, fun scene. And it drives them into a bigger chase of trying to escape from first the pirates, and then the government. You find out is who they were. They were up. It was actually the military that was holding her captive. So that they're trying to Sheeta and Pazu are trying to escape from both entities, and eventually end up falling into a cavern.
Yep. Yeah, they end up falling into the cavern, and one more thing about the flex off. I love that even some of the onlookers, as they're squaring up to each other, somebody just yells, "Make your shirt explode!"
And they do.
And they do, which is that's the thing that you can get away with in animation that in live action it would be really stupid looking, whereas in animation it's fun.
And Kyle can attest to this. The second that started, when one of the sons was involved with that, I looked at what he was doing and I went, "He's going to be my favorite character in this whole movie."
Yes,
And
yes.
spoiler alert, he was.
He definitely was your favorite character in this movie. Yeah, we could tell right away. You were giggling so much, and it wasn't because you were intoxicated. I mean, that probably helped.
Yeah, it does at times for giggles.
For all the giggles. But yeah, they meet another old crazy guy in the caverns. He, of course, at first thinks that Pazu is a goblin. And is like, "Oh, young goblin, you look a lot like Pazu, but my eyes are old and I can't see very well. So I'll just trust that you're a good goblin."
But he's a nice little plot point, because he essentially tells them a little bit about the crystal that she has, the Ethereum, letting her know that it is magic, and it's bringing. He turns. There's also a nice, pretty scene in this too, where he shuts out all the lights and you see the rocks glowing throughout the cavern, and that's when you see her stone, her crystal glowing as well. It's a really just nice visual scene.
Yep. Yeah, which had to have definitely been an influence for a scene that comes up later in Avatar: The Last Airbender. When they shut off all the lights and have to follow, So yeah, that was a really and that was one of the beautifully animated scenes as well, of just, wow, this is, like I said, I think Nausicaa looks a little better, but there are moments throughout this movie that you can see it's like, wow, the animation is drop dead gorgeous at points.
Oh, very much so. They do a really good job with the flying machines, with the different steampunk airships and everything. That's a lot of fun. I think that Nausicaa is a better looking movie in general, but this one does have a little bit more crispness to some of it,
Yes.
that Nausicaa doesn't have. Nausicaa feels a little more, not rushed, uh, but a little more amateur in certain aspects that this doesn't have that feel. Like this one has a little bit more smoothness.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But to continue on with the story of the movie itself, she essentially gets captured um, by Colonel Muska,
Yep.
Colonel Muska, and gets him released as well by agreeing to go along with them. And then we get introduced to a robot.
Yes.
These robots, fun fact about these robots, this is not the first time that they've appeared in a Miyazaki piece of animation.
Okay.
They actually originally appeared in Lupin the Third.
Ah, I thought they looked familiar.
Yep, the long-armed robot first appeared in Lupin the Third, not in the movie, not in Castle Cagliostro that we watched, but in some of the episodes. It appeared in the last episode of the second series, titled "Lupin, Whom I Loved."
Okay. Which that one, Lupin Who I Loved, was directed by Miyazaki, and some of the animation layers of that were actually used in Nausicaa, and then now it sounds like one of the character designs was used, for this movie. So that's cool.
Yeah, so the robot is pretty much the same robot as this movie, and the girl from that episode is actually pretty much the same design as Nausicaa for Nausicaa. So
Okay.
he definitely took a lot from that episode that he did. I just thought that was a fun fact there. So at this point, she's in the castle. She is trying to get away from her captors, and while this is happening, Pazu has actually befriended the pirates and told them that he'll help them get the crystal if he helps them save her.
Yeah. Yeah, Pazu makes that deal as the pirates just took over his house that he just left.
The pirates are fun in this.
They are.
It starts out in a nice, interesting way where you don't really know if the pirates are going to be good or bad. I had a general idea that they were going to be good from the get-go, but
Yeah.
But you don't really know from the beginning and from the initial chase and everything. And they are very much comic relief, and very, very well done. They were the three old men in Nausicaa. Like this is also a bit that happens a lot where you're going to have those comic relief characters, and a lot of times in Miyazaki it is a trio of people.
Yeah, the comic relief, the Greek chorus as we called them,
Yep.
So yeah, they all go, and like Nausicaa ends up, this robot comes back to life because of her crystal and starts attacking this castle and chasing after her. Because a lot of the scenes that I liked were these little chase scenes, and the robot keeps going after her, and she scales this tower to escape from it, and then she's about to have to leap off the tower, and then the robot grabs her, and then she actually tells the robot to put her down, and the robot puts her down. And then that's like when she realizes, like, wait, I can control these robots, or at least that's the impression that you get, because she's still wearing the crystal at that time. But then the government airships start doing an airstrike, and they destroy the robot and the tower.
But while this happens, Pazu comes in and with Captain Dola and saves Sheeta. She does drop the crystal. The crystal at this point has actually been powered up to find the castle in the sky. You find out that her full name is actually Lucida Toel Ur Laputa, which is the name of the castle in the sky, Laputa.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and
they
the earlier part of that name means like is like ruler of, is her family name. So
Yep. So they decide that they're going to stay with the pirates and try to find the castle, while the military is also doing the same thing because they have the jewel, the crystal, to find it and point them in the right direction.
yeah, and
And
animation wise during this fight, before Pazu rescues her, before Pazu rescues Sheeta, him and Dola are on the aircraft, and the aircraft just stops working and just plummets. And you get the plummeting all the way, and Pazu's trying to grab the controls and get everything back under control. And just as they're about to hit the water, he pulls back up and goes and then finally rescues Sheeta. And that was a really intense moment, and I really liked that a lot.
so when they get back on the airship, you meet the father of the sons, the pirate sons, and this is actually leading to my next favorite piece in the whole thing, and that's essentially everything that happens on the airship.
Everything that happens on the airship.
Yeah, it's just a fun sequence. It's there's sweetness to it with near the end with Sheeta and Pazu up in the crow's nest together, keeping a lookout. There's fun a funniness to it where all of the people on the airship keep sneaking into the kitchen to help out and impress Sheeta
Yep.
while she's cooking and cleaning. And this is also an interesting change that happened to the English version that I found out.
Okay.
In the Japanese version, they are all treating her like a mother, that they see her as a mother figure.
Oh, okay.
But in the Americanized version, they see her as like a love interest, which is weird because of how young she is.
Yes, I was
So
wondering. Yeah, I was wondering if that was a lost in translation moment as well.
yeah,
Um,
they seemed, I don't know why they decided to make this change in the English version, but it uh they the mother part of it made a lot more sense to me. Um,
yes.
but I guess they thought maybe people wouldn't understand it because of how young she is. But
Yeah. I do like in the course of her being on the ship, her and Dola, Dola grabs her and it's like, you gotta start dressing like a pirate. Like a real pirate, and then gives her these stupid baggy looking pants.
because pirates all dress like MC Hammer.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, those are, you gotta wear MC Hammer pants to be a pirate. Okay. Um, and
Uh,
and yeah, I too echo your sentiments about the little scene in the crow's nest between Sheeta and Pazu.
and there's sweetness all throughout the ship during that too, because you find out that everyone's listening into them. They can be heard throughout the ship, and they're saying good things about Dola, and they're talking about what they wanted to do, and they show the sons, and the sons are crying because they just find it so sweet, and it's just a really nice moment.
Yeah.
Um, and this moment lasts an okay amount of time, but this leads right into an air battle with the military, though.
Yep. Another air battle, which was cool, and actually we find out through the course of this air battle, I love just how kind of quickly Sheeta is to adapt to situations because they're on this like telephone thing. That's not really a telephone. It's more the pipes up in the crow's nest. And she's like, well, you've got to, we're like, hey, we're going to detach the crow's nest and fly above to scout. And, Dola is talking to Sheeta through the little air shaft thing. And it's just like, hey, you can't do that. If you do that, you've got to call me on the telephone instead. And then the telephone rings. She's like, oh, this one?
Yeah, it's a fun little moment. It's a fun little back and forth that happens so fast that you can tell that she was already calling her on the telephone while the line is being said. It's just I don't know. There's a lot of sweetness and a lot of humor to this movie that I really did enjoy. And it shows off. It might not have completely paid off in this movie as a whole, but it really shows off where the Miyazaki films are headed.
Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, I think me not enjoying it as much might have been just it almost counteracted too much from Nausicaa, of Nausicaa being so bloated with story, and this kind of being a little light on story, to make up for that. And like, I think watching them back to back was kind of jarring.
Yeah, I can see that. This one, it needed less explanation to let you know what's happening.
Yes.
So at no point did I feel like I needed more to really to feel out the story itself, which was nice and refreshing. Very different in style when it comes to that, but also a lot of similarities there where it's the same beat by beat like style of storytelling from Nausicaa.
Yes.
It's just different because there's so much less information needed.
Yeah, there's so much less information and so much less backstory needed. But yeah, as the government is attacking, they also start going into this storm. And that's part of why. So Nausicaa Sheeta and Pazu actually tie themselves together in the lookout crow's nest, so that they don't get separated, because they're getting whipped wildly in this storm, and then they crash land eventually, after it was another interesting storm animation of those simple techniques that you can see of like stripping everything down and having it just be the black with some line drawings on it, for the lightning and for Pazu and Sheeta's reaction, and those type of animation styles I really liked.
Yeah, and this moment also had a sweet callback of something we didn't say before, which was Pazu is an orphan, and his father had said that he had actually seen this castle before and gone through a storm to get there. And they have a nice little callback while they're doing this of the father, like, kind of looking back at them going through the same kind of storm. And with the animations you were talking about, the black and then the streaks of lightning, kind of coming down to give motion to the darkness around it. So this was, it's the simplicity of it is where it did it best. Is
yes.
what was best about it.
Yes, exactly. And then they actually crash landed on Laputa.
Yeah, in a glider, I must say.
In the glider. Yep. Again.
More gliders. Yeah, they find a nice ecosystem of forest. They meet up with tiny fox things that look, what I would say exactly like the foxes from Nausicaa.
Yeah, exactly like Teru. Yeah.
Yep, it's another callback to a previous movie, which was nice.
Yeah. But more of them. There was more than one. I liked it.
Yep.
Um,
Then you find out that the pirates were taken captive by the military, and the military are also on there. Um, and while they're doing this, Pazu and Sheeta are trying to find a way to get the pirates to help them escape. But while this is happening, Sheeta ends up getting kidnapped by Colonel Muska. And this is when you find out that Colonel Muska is actually Romuska Palu Ur Laputa, and actually a cousin of Sheeta, and also a member of the family that is part of Laputa.
yep, and I put in the notes. Luckily, he, unlike Castle of Cagliostro, does not try to marry his cousin in this movie.
Yeah, which is better.
He just decides to basically try to torture her instead. So that's better, right? Um, and yeah, so Muska, him and Sheeta and one other person at first go down into this like secret passage that the uh oh yeah, and I want to point out, like, it was super peaceful, so much so that like the robot actually was moving the glider, and Sheeta and Pazu were trying to stop the robot, and then you realize that the robot is trying to move the glider because the glider almost landed on a bird's nest.
Yep.
You know,
And I mean the top of this of the castle here is completely like it's a giant tree in the middle, and there's a lot of wildlife and flowers, and it's very beautiful. And then below you have the castle itself, which is where the military is, and they are uh, pillaging and pilfering as much as they can and stealing everything that they can find for treasure.
yep. And
Um,
then yeah, and then we get into this secret passage with Muska and Sheeta, and it's all these floating cubes and really interesting looking, stuff, that they're just kind of floating on these cubes, because you find out there's a giant version of Sheeta's crystal that is what is powering this entire island.
and Muska then takes Sheeta's crystal and starts to power it himself. Starts to move all these blocks around, and essentially murders a majority of the military.
Yeah,
I don't know if he,
he completely turns on the government that he's spying on and helping for his own personal interests.
but a fun thing while this is happening is that Pazu is having his own Cloud City, Luke Skywalker falling through, dangling thing under the castle here and trying to find a way in. Um, while he's doing that, Muska shows that there's essentially a weapon of mass destruction in the bottom of this castle. He can blow anything up that he wants. He wants to essentially take over the world with it.
Yeah, because the crystal is powering. Yeah, it looks like a bunch of guns and
Yep.
cannons.
So Muska kills a lot of the military, including General Muro, Jim Cummings, Pooh himself, and
Oh
and
bother!
while this is happening, Sheeta steals the crystal back and goes on an escape. Pazu finds his way back in to help her out. There's a nice little scene where he's like on the other side of some foliage, and she like breaks through and gives the crystal to him to hide. And then instead of hiding it and running away, he, as somebody trying to save the girl does, instead forces himself back through there to go and help her.
Yeah, because he's got this, like, it looked like a big flare gun almost, but it was like almost a grenade launcher, like
Yeah.
a hand grenade launcher that, yeah, he's just blowing stuff up with.
Yep,
Um,
it was gifted to him by the pirates because he does save the pirates during this to get to this area. Gets them, unties them, and gets them back into their, not into their ship. Their ship is destroyed, but their little firefly ships that they were using earlier.
Yeah.
Dragonfly ships. There we go. Um,
Dragonfly is a better analogy for those.
and all this
Uh,
time, the military is escaping because giant robots have been set loose on the entire thing. He activates Muska when he did the weapon of mass destruction. He also activated all these robots to attack everybody.
yeah, and they're
Um,
flying around, and that was a really cool visual as well of all the robots flying around, and yeah, it was
and then he
cool.
kills the rest of the military.
Yeah, then he kills the rest of the military. As Pazu, in the kingdom of dreams and nightmares, or dreams and madness documentary. They did like a montage of like all of Miyazaki's films, and they actually use the shot of Pazu running up the tunnel with the gun, as the shot from Castle in the Sky, as
Uh,
they
and
as they were going over Miyazaki's directorial timeline.
Very nice. And then they. So something we didn't mention earlier is that Sheeta says that she was taught magic spells by her grandmother. I want to say.
Yeah, it was her grandmother.
And there was one she was told never to use, but she had to know the destruction spells to know the spells to heal or something of that sort.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
and,
she had to know. She had to know the evil spells to counteract and be able to use the good spells, kind of
and
thing.
this but this is how she saves the day because she essentially uses he permits Pazu to have a moment to say goodbye to Sheeta, and he has the crystal in his hand. He whispers, he goes, "Tell me the spell, then say it with me." And they say it out loud, and causes the castle to start to crumble and come apart. The crystal is no
But
longer going to be.
but before that, you missed one of my least favorite character moments of the entire movie, where Sheeta gets her pigtails shot off by Muska.
He's such a good shot that he literally shoots each pigtail off one at a time to
Yeah.
shorten her hair. I completely forgot about that. That was just so ridiculous.
Yeah, it was just like, what is going on? Like, there ends up being like a nice moment at the end, because of this, but it was like he just shot off her pigtails. Like the whole time, I'm just thinking about Knives Chow from Scott Pilgrim when Todd punches the highlights out of her hair.
Yeah, it's a very good cartoony style
Yeah.
uh, comparison there.
Yeah, and it's like you shot off her pigtails, which also in shooting off her pigtails, like we haven't referenced this yet, but this is basically the proto design for Kiki.
Oh yeah, very much so. Like she very much looks like Kiki, and that's also something that happens in Miyazaki. He recycles the looks of
Yeah.
characters, which I think is fine. I think
Oh yeah,
if you have a
it's fine. It's just it feels like, especially knowing this was before, and it's like, well, this is like 4 years beforehand. Like we basically have Kiki in this movie. Okay, because
um,
it's blue dress, bow in the hair, and pigtails for out most of the movie, and then at the end it's like, oh, blue dress, bow in the hair, short, like shoulder length hair.
yeah.
That's Kiki.
And then the end of the movie is nice. That the castle itself at the bottom falls apart. The crystal is still rising, and it's rising the tree and the forest part at the top up into the sky. Um, and as this happens, the pirates are kind of lamenting, thinking that that Sheeta and Pazu had died. But then they're in the roots. They're saved in the roots, and they get the glider, I believe, and then they go back
Yep.
down to the pirates and pair up with the pirates, and you find out that
Yeah, they say that um they got saved by the roots, and because what Sheeta really did wasn't so much like she kind of had the crystal destroy, but what it ended up doing was basically the city is going to fly into space now.
Yes.
And so it keeps going up, and then they find the glider and then glide down. And I actually really love the shot from behind the glider of the city starting to fade into the background as they fly away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they meet up with the pirates, as you were saying.
And then you get another couple funny moments where you find out the pirates did find time to steal jewels and everything. And I think they ask if they'll come and pirate with them, and they pretty much say no, we're gonna go and live quietly. And then you just quietly watch the tree continue to rise with the final song. It's a nice ending. It's a easy ending. Um, the ending, I wouldn't say the ending was disappointing, but it felt easy. It felt like what was going to happen, like what
Yeah.
was gonna, yeah.
Yeah. And I like the little moment that the reason that you discover that the pirates have stolen the treasure is actually because of this nice little tender moment of Dola just grabbing Sheeta and hugging her and be like, I know how much of a pain it is to lose your pigtails, and hugging her tightly. And then that's when she realizes she stuffed rubies down her blouse.
Yep.
Um,
Now we watched the English dub, as we are gonna watch with all these movies. Sorry for all of you subtitle enthusiasts, but there's a few interesting stats about the English dub,
Okay.
so that's different from the Japanese original. So when they changed it to American audience, one of the things that they did was that they brought in Joe Hisashi, and they commissioned him to rework and extend the original his original 60-minute electronic orchestral score into a 90-minute symphonic orchestral score, because they
Okay.
felt it would be more palatable for American audiences.
Okay, interesting.
They also, and that was completely approved by Miyazaki. He said that he even listened to the score beforehand, and he liked it.
Okay.
They also added a lot of background chatter, so like the things that you were talking about in the scenes before of the tear off your shirt, like that was added in.
I was
They wanted,
wondering about that. Okay.
yeah, they said that they wanted to fill in moments of silence and increase the frenetic energy, the frenetic effect of some scenes. So they added these in to try to add and keep the movie moving a little bit, because they felt like it was going a little too that some of those scenes slowed it down because there wasn't the background.
Okay. I can see that, but I also don't agree with it, kind of thing. You know?
Yep. I'm okay with background lines being thrown in. It happens a lot in animated films, like especially in Disney and Pixar ones. They'll watch a movie and then they'll realize, oh, we really need to add something to the scene, and then they'll bring in the actors again to just throw random things with their character.
That's why, especially like knowing the Pixar style of like, that's why half of the animation directors are also end up being credited voice actors, because they're those additional voices of like, oh, we had to throw a line in here, we had to throw a line in here, kind of thing.
I had already mentioned that during the Dola Gang dialogue, the pirate dialogue, that they changed it to a declaration of love from a potential mother figure to a potential romantic interest.
Okay.
One other thing that they did was they asked James Van Der Beek and Anna Paquin to try to sound a little bit older, so that the kids can sound like they're in their mid-teens, when actuality, in the Japanese version, I believe they are like 12 or 13.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say, like, and Pazu aging up makes sense, because he's already kind of working and and doing this stuff already as he's an orphan and trying to make it by himself. But yeah, aging up Sheeta was a little interesting.
Yeah, it was. It doesn't really play off as aged up though. Like their voices
Yeah.
still don't seem like mid-teens. Like I still saw them as like 13
Yes.
while watching this. Um,
So did I.
but yeah, overall, I think this is a good movie. I think that it is. I had mentioned last time in the Nausicaa episode that at a Japanese Media Arts Festival, Nausicaa was voted number one, the best animated film of all time at that
Okay.
festival. This was actually voted number two in the same
Oh,
in the
okay.
same poll. Uh, so it's very well received. People really do enjoy this movie. It does show, um, and if you're watching along with us, which I hope you are, it does have a lot of early, as we said before, early art styles, character design, tropes, like a lot of early things that Miyazaki really expands on in some of the later movies. So with us that we've seen a lot of the later movies first, that might be one of the reasons why this doesn't resonate as well with us.
Yeah.
Because we know these Miyazaki tropes, and we know that he does do them better later on. But being this is the start of some of those, just like Nausicaa was the start of a few of them as well. It's something that I very much appreciate. I think that this is it's worthy of being talked about as one of the better animated movies, especially when it comes to influence.
Yes, I agree with that. And yeah, I think part of why it took a little while for specifically me to like rewatch it was, yeah, I was trying to get into that mindset of the time. And, you know, that's always more difficult to realize, like even when I was in film school, like going, and seeing those old like 40s and 50s, detective movies, and realizing it's like, okay, this feels really tropey, but that's because these are where all the tropes came from.
Yeah.
Whereas, this is kind of the same thing of like, okay, I kind of know where these things are going to go and how this type of storytelling is going to develop, but it's not quite there yet, but it's very close and it still works very well at the time. And it ages fairly well too.
Yeah, this is still it's watchable. So it's not something that's I had to force myself to try to get through. Especially that very first watch through. I enjoyed it a lot. Like I was really into it. The second watch through was a little bit different because that's when I'm trying to watch with an eye of somebody that's going to talk about it. And that became a little bit harder on this one than it was in Nausicaa. But I think that's because there was less of those beat points that we really have to hit.
Yeah, and that's what we said. So like, yeah, most of the time, we how we've been doing this so far is we'll basically watch each movie at least twice. In watching it once just to get kind of the general overall impression. At least this is what I've been doing, and then going back and watching it a second time to do all of our more specific notes, and then going back and rewatching like a couple scenes here and there, to get more specific things out of it.
Yeah, and I generally actually have it on in the background while we're talking, so I can fast forward to certain scenes while we're talking about them.
See, that's the thing of like us recording in separate rooms. I don't know this.
So I mean, overall, I would say if you haven't watched it, I think that this is very much worth a watch. I think that this is a very good movie, and I keep saying it. It's better. It's better than. It's a better movie as a whole than Castle of Cagliostro, and it's a better movie when it comes to being a beginning, middle, end, full on, able to pack this in 2 hours movie than Nausicaa.
Yeah. Yeah,
Nausicaa was a better story, but I needed more from it.
yeah, I can see that. Like I've so far in doing, because halfway through our series we're going to do a re-ranking episode. So I've been keeping track and kind of putting things into place, and it's like I still might have Nausicaa just a touch ahead of this, but it's it's definitely better. And actually, through the course of this discussion, I actually realized I enjoyed it more than I thought I did.
Yeah, I have Nausicaa ahead of this as well right now, because of the story. Like I said, this to me is a better complete movie, while Nausicaa is a better story. Um, and I think in the end, the story and some of the animation points in Nausicaa, I think, were also better. Like the gargantuan monster at the end, and yeah. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting as we see more and more of these, of where the everything ends up going in our rankings.
Yeah, so this was a nice, fun, lighthearted movie. And next movie we are going to
Your
cover.
face thing. We will suffer through, but not in like you suffer as in it's a bad movie, but suffer as in like it's gonna be sad.
Yeah, we're going to be weeping openly uh, during this. But it's our first Ghibli guest uh, episode as well. So we are going to be covering The Grave of the Fireflies.
Grave of the Fire Cries.
It's going to be difficult. It is available for those of you watching along. It is available to stream on Hulu.
Yes, it's one of the few that won't be on HBO Max, because of the uniqueness, and we'll get into the uniqueness of the distribution for this one
Yes.
when we talk about it.
And yeah, just a little heads up. So it was actually a double feature release, along with My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, couldn't be any more different between those two, huh?
Yeah. And yeah, we were trying to figure out what to do first, and we'll talk about this more in the episode. But it was a double feature, and it was a double bill, and they experimented a couple times on which movie to put on in which place, and it seemed to, for audiences, they really enjoyed having Grave of the Fireflies first and then My Neighbor Totoro, so that they could at least leave the theater happy. Whereas if you did My Neighbor Totoro and you're like, oh, that was so fun and whimsical, and then Grave of the Fireflies starts and you start weeping, yeah, it's
Yeah, hurt
such
your
a
heart.
it's such a good movie, but it's so, like, for those that you haven't seen it, really emotion wise, and I don't even know if it's it's close to this level. Emotion wise, like, I'd rank it up there in similarities to like Schindler's List.
Yeah. So, and we'll get into it more. It is a lot of basis in World War II and the atomic bomb and things like that. So there's a lot of basis going on there. So be prepared for that. It is going to be a little bit more of a emotionally draining movie, but it is worth it due to the fact of how good the movie is itself. So don't be afraid to watch it if you're listening to this and be like, I don't know if I want to do that. It's
Yeah.
still it's such an amazing movie that it's worth the watch.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
so
gonna
good.
bring out some emotions in you. So, any final thoughts on Castle in the Sky?
On Castle in the Sky, like I said, throughout this discussion, I really realized I enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought I did while I was taking notes and everything. There were some really interesting scenes, like really well animated scenes. Like, it, especially at the beginning, it felt like it was such a chaotic pace, and you got all that kinetic energy going because it was, Sheeta escaping from the airship, then Sheeta and Pazu having to run from the pirates and the railroad scene, and then you get this lull in the caves to explain things, and then you kind of keep the lull going, and then you have this crazy castle battle with the robot and the robot chase, and you have a little break in the tension on the ship, and then rise back up for the conclusion. So it was a really well done film, as always. And yeah, like Miyazaki is a master.
Yeah, for sure. One final the final thing I'll end on is just a little bit more on the robots and the ships that they use here. Especially so the robots are very coolly done, and you can really see while watching it why steampunk was really there's gears in the eyes, and there's you can see them kind of come apart at times. You can see all the gears inside of them, which is really cool. But the Dragonfly airships, the single to dual person airships that they use are really really cool, and we didn't really give them a lot of justice here with the way that they're portrayed in this movie. Like they've got like dual wings on the side that flap at very high speeds.
Yeah,
And
with
it's just
this little like go-kart um chassis body, like almost not quite like uh it's almost like a roller coaster cart would be what I
yeah, very much so.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're just really really cool, and you can find little videos here and there of people that try to do like drone, like they're almost they're drone like as well, with
Okay,
the
yeah.
except the wings are kind of going up and down rather than circular. And people kind of trying to do drones in the style of those, so that's kind of cool to look at. They do make a couple of them fly. um so that's really neat. So I just wanted to point that out, and they were very influential, like I said, on steampunk culture, and it's you can really see where it comes from in this movie. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my final bit there.
Yeah, and then Shane, do your plugs.
Yeah, so check out Fantasy Hangover. We did just have a new episode come out probably a couple weeks ago at the point of this release. Um, just Carl and I discussing NCAA realignment. It's kind of fun little bit. We're gonna try to get a couple of those out during the season, just to break up the mediocrity, since we can't really do it with consistency right now. And then yeah, some character work, still some discussion of that coming back in the future. So might see some new episodes of that coming out soon.
Cool. Then yeah, you can follow me as always at Knocked Out Films on all social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel where this video is getting posted. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher. All those links are below. And thanks for listening and watching.
Be good to each other.